And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to yet another weekly meeting of our Performance Roundtable of Code Review. So we'll get straight to the point. Basically, we have a couple of open topics and looking at the board. So for reference, I'm going into the board and looking at the ones that are still being refined so we can discuss. So if you have topics, if you're watching the recording and you want to have topics that we should be looking into, make sure to add those to that column in the board. So first is Apollo Cache Persist. We had approached this in the last week or the last call we had, but nobody really was on top of things. And I pinged Stanislav and he got a little bit of an update on that issue. So Stas, do you want to quick summarize it? Should I?
Well, there's basically not much that we can do with Apollo Cache Persist because we don't use a lot of GraphQL API. Most of our heavy APIs are our regular JSON APIs. The one that might be that might benefit from it is labels, but I think Natalia just recently posted that labels already have this, so there is not much left for us to do here, I think.
Yeah, you're right. She's working on it. I'm not sure what the status of that is at the moment, but actually, let me just scroll. Oh, the draft MR was merged. Yes. Yep. I did feel like he was a bit faster, and I was like, Natalia, is that you? So yeah, I think he was. Good stuff. So we're definitely going to be seeing how that rolls out and the feedback of it. As I was pondering your comment last week, I think one of the places that that is in our domain would be user mentions, which I'm not sure we have reviewers, but like you said, we don't really take much benefit of persisting that across multiple page views. But when we're writing a comment in a merge request, we're adding people left and right. But I'm kind of torn between investing on the benefit of persisting the queries or surfacing the participants right from the get-go without having to load anything from the server. Anybody has any opinions on that?
I don't think neither is possible right now because the autocomplete itself is not using view. It's using jQuery add who, which is a very old library that we have to support. Yeah.
We need to
that's
kill it.
One of the reasons we cannot simply go there and add GraphQL or add some caching, reusing some data from the page. That's one of the blockers. And I have an issue exactly for that to at least try it. So this library is actually a big blocker for us.
Okay. Do you want to add some? Do you want to add a comment to that? I'm going to add a comment right now to that issue. Maybe you can add that. It feels like there's not a lot we can do right now in the context of performance right here. So I would propose we can still continue to explore that topic, but we can take the refinement later. There's not much to drill further on this topic in the upcoming weeks, right? So we can take it off the board, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
We can still work on it, but I just wanted to mention that it's not related to GraphQL caching stuff because we are not using GraphQL in autocomplete at all.
Okay. We added comments and removed label. All right. So we can move on to the next topic. Thanks, Stas. So the next topic, suppressing files and diffs to reduce overall payload. I'm wondering if there's still work to be done. Now that we've scheduled 15.9, if I'm not mistaken, we have we scheduled an issue, didn't we, Kai and Matt? For spiking, we didn't make it.
I'm
looking at that now.
I don't think it made it. I think Carrie and I are still talking, but I don't think we technically planned anything. Sound right?
I don't know if it's been planned or not.
Okay.
I'm a little, I don't want to say confused, but I just want to like, if someone can like explain the connection to me. Caillou and I have been talking in a different issue about using linguists to like suppress generated files, like that whole thing. And the issue that's linked here is more about doing server-side rendering, or at least that's the conversation that's happening. Are those related topics or two different initiatives or ideas?
I think these two are different because the original issue mentions just removing very large diffs from the payload, and server-side rendering basically suggests removing the API itself and just outputting the ready markup, and that's it. So it should be done on the markup level, not on the API level. And these are different.
So I think that's why the issue is still open. We left it because of the server-side rendering discussion. So that discussion that you're having, Carrie, definitely still makes sense and makes sense in that context. I think this is just an issue that has the wrong title, I guess. Is there anything else to be discussed on the context of server-side rendering, though, of this discussion that Patrick and Stanislav were having on this issue? Is there anything left to be discussed, or are we just waiting for prioritization on that effort? We have a spike for that on 59.
I don't think there's much to discuss. We just need to try it.
Okay.
And see the results.
I don't think we scheduled anything though in 15.9 to like investigate this thread. I have not seen this like server-side rendering thread.
Let me just double check. I think we have something. Give me just a second.
So maybe we can use 15.9 to discuss it. If there is any additional discussion that needs to happen, especially around like, what do we need to implement? What do we need to build, even for a spike? And then we can get it at 15.10.
So we have a spike for Stas to investigate the server-side rendering. Then this is tied with some of the work that he's already doing in other stuff, but there will be some investigation on the front-end side of things related to server-side rendering. Again, we're not aiming for full server-side rendering. We're aiming for partial server-side rendering, and then working with that. And Stas is working on a related thing with the blame page that we're trying to get some lessons out of. So this is the continuation of that investigation applied to the diffs. So, but yeah, this issue feels like issue has the wrong title.
I just mean the backend doesn't have anything planned though. So like, I think the last comment is that Patrick wanted to do a backend spike for this, but there was no issue, and I don't think we've scheduled. And I know we did not schedule anything related to this. This is the first I've seen of like server.
Fair enough. So what I'll do is we have a front-end investigation scheduled for 15.9. Stas, please sync up with Patrick on your conclusions. For now, I'm taking the refinement out. I'm removing the refinement. I should be sharing the screen so you will not just staring at our faces, but I'm removing the refinement label off with this issue. In that way, we're making progress on these things. Gosh, I can't type. Double colon. Sorry, my brain. I was labeling something, but I want to unlabel. All right, cool. Sorry for that. Any other things we should talk about at this point about any of these two topics, or can we move on to the lazy load? Right, let's move on to the lazy load. This is a new topic. I think it hasn't been discussed yet here on the context of the call. So Stas, you opened this, so you want to do a sort of a short pitch on what you were thinking about this?
Yeah, we basically have an SPA-like behavior on our merge request. So when you open up changes pages, for example, it loads merge request description, because when you navigate to the overview, you have to have that there. And that leads to some performance issues if you have very large descriptions, and also if it has a lot of markdown stuff in it, like some tables or anything else. Basically, you have to load it with every page. Even if you go, for example, to commits page, you still load the description because it has to be there. So the idea was to lazy load it when we are on any other page except for overview. So it's not rendered by default, but if you go to the overview, it is fetched and rendered. And when you go to the overview, initially it's already there. This should at least remove the HTML size, and it won't be necessary to parse all the markdown, etc., etc.
So JavaScript's actually loading it and it's expanding the return, even if it's not actually rendered.
It does that in the background. So when you open a page, one of the things it does, it scans the whole page for the markdown code, and it transforms it into interactive content, whatever it is. Like the code blocks became actually code blocks and stuff like that. So even if you don't see the overview, it is still loading, it is still executing. And the idea is to do it only when you actually see the content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Andrei, you also asked about SEO. This won't have any impact on SEO because when we go to the overview page directly, it shouldn't be any different from what it is right now. It only should change for the pages that are not the overview page.
Okay.
When you
go ahead, Kai.
I was gonna say, when you say we'll only load it if you go to the overview page, does that mean like I would click on the overview tab and then like would see a spinner while we retrieve and then parse and render, or like we'll have the data, we just won't expand it?
We can do this in different ways. For example, we can fetch it in the background. Fetch it, but don't insert it into the DOM immediately. Or we can do it the most lazy way is to show a spinner, wait for the request, insert it, but that's not ideal. So fetching it in the background seems like the most compromised way of doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be
then
cautious about the user experience of like making someone wait to like click on a tab on the page. That would be my concern.
I'm curious about the gains though, like what sort of proportion this would gain. What sort of gain this would give us? Is it a memory gain? Is it what's the impact on the performance that you expect?
One of the things that actually blocks the start of the page is the amount of HTML we serve. So if we have a really large description in the issue or in the MR, that actually blocks us from starting the bundle. So if we don't have this content, we can start sooner and show the diffs instead of showing the spinner, loading all the content, and then executing the bundle. So this should theoretically improve the performance for MRs with large descriptions. If it has like, I don't know, 1,000 words, it won't be that effective.
Right. But we all know that there's some issues that get really long. So the merge request description. All right, I'd be willing to investigate this further. Stas, would you please create an issue for? Sorry, this is already an issue. Sorry. So what I think we can do is put this in the pipeline for one of the upcoming milestones, so we can consider it for implementation. and then be prioritized against other things that we have on the pipeline. But yeah, I think it's optimizing basically the loading of other tabs. I definitely feel like it's worthwhile. It doesn't seem like a big effort, does it, Stas?
We'll have to create a new API, so that's probably the most intensive thing, and also some front-end code, but it shouldn't be that complicated, I think.
When you say new API, can't we get the description right away?
We need a new API endpoint to fetch the description. So basically fetch this HTML and then insert it as is.
So that doesn't exist today, an API to get the description?
No.
Written version. Okay. I'm adding the label backend and removing the refinement. If nobody objects, I'm going to put the mouse on for 1510 so it pops up on the planning conversations. Okay, is that okay? All right. We discussed this on our call. Putting it up for consideration of 1510. All righty. Thanks. Next. So this is an issue I created, so I'll do my best to present it. So this came up in the conversation of the fiscal year 24 vision issue that I created, and Mark Shaw brought up the topic of observability and increasing visibility of the performance of our pages and stuff. He was asking whether that would be a push from product, that sort of thing. So I don't have much right now. I just created it a while ago, a few minutes. So I'm going to be inviting Mark to kind of like flesh it out a little bit more in the coming days and stuff. So I feel like it's a bit too early, but if anybody has any thoughts on it, I already shared mine in the issue. Basically, there's several things here. It could be merge request analytics could help us. I think that's not exactly what it means. We have several performance dashboards of the code review pages through site speed, including some quality teams suites of tests for the reference architectures that we're using and referencing a lot. And recently the team worked on tracking the duration of specific parts of the diffs request. And Kai added the link to the dashboard. Thanks. Oh, sorry, you had the link to the issue to create a dashboard. Is that it?
Yeah, I think I had asked Patrick in that issue, like, how do we see? Like it said it was done, and then I was like, well, how do we see it? I think that's potentially part of what Mark is talking about, and one of the things I'm sort of questioning as we talk about these things too is like, we have all of these. How do we make sure we're all using like the same data all the time to talk about the same thing? Like, it's not helpful to me as an outsider to be like, go query Prometheus. Like, that's not like a feasible thing. And it's not like helpful, I think, for everyone, because like those queries will be slightly different, or they won't look at the same data or the date range or whatever. Like, and I think he's gonna look at doing a Grafana dashboard for that. But it would be nice to like, I think make sure that we have pages that we go to, and like probably something in our handbook section that's like, here are all of the dashboards that we use for performance and like what they are, with like details of what they're looking at and how to like interpret them. Because I think that's one of the things that's missing probably just in general. Like, I know Stanislav did a ton of work on like the site speed stuff. I actually have no idea like if any of that anyone else could do, or if all of that was local, or like could we share those dashboards, like those kinds of things that like I think we have some insights, but we don't have a good way to make sure that everyone's talking about the same thing. That makes sense.
Do you feel like, so I see this in two ways. Are you expecting to have one place to see the actual different metrics of different things, or a simple handbook page linking to all the relevant dashboards would be enough?
I'm fine with it. I don't think it's reasonable to have like one Grafana page that has everything, because I'm not sure that's not like a single tool for us, right? Like, we don't have a single tool to do it all, but we should have an aggregated place to like tell you where to go to all of them, and then sort of like what they all do. So you're not left to your own imagination to like interpret a chart based on like the whims of how you want to read X's and Y axes and things.
That's actually exactly what I was going to suggest when I opened up this issue, because I had the same problem where like I want to answer a question. I'm like, I don't even know where. I have to remember like what's Grafana versus Kibana. It's a confusing mess. So just if we organized it and said, here's our standard tools, right? Our reference documents, if you will, and at least we have a place to start communally.
Yeah, and I would suspect like a lot of people only know what they've worked on, right? Like I would suspect most people haven't seen the site speed work that Stanislav did, unless they were like closely following that issue and that MR to like see all the timings and everything he was going through with like different, like nobody, I don't think anyone saw that. The timings that Patrick shipped just recently, I don't think anyone saw that. Like I was curious, like what now that we have that, like are we looking at it and looking for like, and no one like had said anything because I don't think anyone knew that work like existed, right? And I think that's sort of like the missing piece of our observability. Like I think we actually probably have more data than people think. We just don't surface it in a way that unless you're like on top of all of them, you'll never know.
I don't in any way want to make more work for anybody, but it would be really cool if every 2 weeks, once a release or something, like we just sent out a like, hey, here's the performance trends over the last period of time, just link to the relevant, here's 3 or 4 interesting graphs that show nothing or something interesting. I know that I found about Stanislav, I found about your work when I think Andre, you sent out a link saying, look at this great improvement. I'm like, yep, graph goes down, awesome. But like other than that, like I don't have any context for understanding it. So but providing that, right? Because observability is all great, or measuring things is great, but if you're not observing the measurement, then like, are we observing things? So.
If a chart on the dashboard goes down, but nobody's watching it, does it really go down? All right, sorry. But yes, I 100% agree. I'm already dropping a comment on that issue that you suggested, having periodic updates, like 2 weeks after release, about the current metrics. Yeah, sounds like a good way. We could leverage Slack or because that's where we're all hanging out, and it would be a good place to kind of like have more relevant information shown to everybody. Let's discuss that in the issue, because there's definitely the better way of doing this automatically, and it just grabs the information from all places. But maybe we could start with a manual. So, I'll see. Let's discuss it there, because I'd be willing to kind of like take it for a couple of months and see how it runs. So the first step would be have the summary of all the dashboard places that we found relevant. And then we could have some DRIs for each one of the dashboards that are like two people or something looking at all the dashboards, coming up with highlights every 2 weeks would be doable at least. So I feel like that's a great idea. I'm dropping that comment there so that my future self remembers it, that I mentioned this on the call. Maybe we can start with some manual updates provided by some volunteers. In quotes, right?
You don't sell it that way, Andre. What you got to sell it as, hey, here's an opportunity to develop your corporate communication, team transparency skills. If you need to like add some of that stuff for your credit values for your 360 review.
Career growth opportunity. I'm actually going to write that in the issue. That's great. No, I 100% agree. All right. Boom. Thanks. That's funny. No, that's great. Any more thoughts on this topic? All right. Thank you so much for all your thoughts. An update. Phil is already back. And following the great work that Carrie has done updating the documentation, he's already working on adding some front and relevant information to the docs, all the technical things. And I'm going to write this in the agenda. So what I'm thinking is, once we have that in merged. I'll probably create either an asynchronous issue or an actual call to go through the documentation that we created together. Because the goal of the documentation, if you remember, was to get a snapshot of the current state of the system, and now we can point at things in the mermaid charts, the mermaid graphs, to, hey, we probably should rethink this, or maybe we can join these two things together, and or move this to the front end and move this to the back end. I feel like that's a joint effort. So yeah, just a heads up. We're getting some movement after Phil came back, so we might have some updates soon. I'll be posted. So docs updates. Phil is working on the front end. After this is merged, we'll have an issue/call to go through them together. All right. Any other topics that we might want to discuss at this point?
I have one question that I've raised previously while working on changes page performance, is that we have only a single page that we test against our 10K architecture. And the problem with that is we have a lot of different kinds of merge requests. On some merge requests, you don't need a sidebar. On some merge requests, you have one file, but it's 1,000 lines. And all this work quite differently and can be affected in many different ways. So I was thinking, does it make sense to introduce more pages that cover different aspects of merge request, like a lot of files or a lot of lines changed, collapsed sidebar, anything else? So that is my question.
I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and I'll give the room for others to share. Yes, off the face of it, 100%. I do feel like, and I don't want to demote you from investing in that and finding other MRs and stuff, but I feel like currently, I don't think we have, the problem isn't assessing the metrics. I think what we need to start betting on heavily is on actual changing the systems that we currently have meaningfully, and more than just iteratively improving, which is great and welcome. I feel like we need to start thinking really hard at what's the disruptive rethinking of the systems that we need to do to make the quantum leaps of performance on our system. And yes, definitely having different kinds of MRs being tracked will give us different perspectives of some of this stuff. The sidebar that you mentioned, like the improvements we're going to be doing on the diff file tree thing, is definitely one of the examples that if you have that closed off, you don't even you're not affected by that delay, right? So yeah, 100%. But I wanted to always keep in mind that improving the metrics does not benefit the users. So it's a first step towards a second step. So just reminder. Sorry, I don't want to burst your bubble, but I do want to say that. Kai.
Yeah, I'll add, we got a reasonable amount of pushback when we asked for this previously, based on the way the testing environments are stood up. Like it was hard enough to find that one MR that we do use for testing. The test data that they have preloaded is really limited, and they're not super keen on, they weren't at the time, this might have changed, they weren't super keen on like expanding the test data for us or letting us manually create something or grab things from different projects. They were, there was a lot of pushback on it, and even shifting to the one we did was, it took a lot of effort. So like, I think the concern from your side is understood. Like I agree. Like I've never been in love with the fact that we test one MR that's sort of like not representative of the rest of things, because it makes it really hard to understand if we're like doing the right things. I also don't know if it's like a path that's worth like our time and energy. And I don't know if you've seen, I'll just link it in chat. You can go read, there's a backlog thread. I'll just link you actually to that thread. If you go to
that's
that
the
thread,
10K. That's related to the 10K reference architecture that requires the quality team to update their infrastructure and stuff. But we do have the other site speed dashboard that we use for stuff, especially in source code team. What we've used it extensively for is we can add URLs in production or staging to be tracked by site speed, and you will get the web vitals metrics. It's not as deep as probably the 10K reference architecture because there's a bunch of other things at play there. But we can track the performance of special URLs and we can prepare projects for it. And there's no hurdles there. The only question is if we put a URL there over a certain project, that's subject to change and it can be deleted or whatever. But that could be a way out. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, you're making a frowning face.
No, sorry, I was reading.
Okay. That's right. We have another dashboard for tracking live URLs. Instead of being a safe laboratory environment that we run an instance of whatever, we have another site speed that monitors production URLs. And in that case, we can add URLs freely. I believe the restrictions there is the signed in experience is a little bit restricted, but we can track the performance of live URL there. So if we want to track certain MRs that we know is a different kind, we can use that site speed instead. It just won't be a 10K reference architecture. It's a little bit more fluctuating, but it's still providing useful information. I'll link it in the agenda if I find the link in my history, which again, if you had a page, I would go there to get there.
I've added a debug bear there as well. It also allows you to track production pages. So it also could be very useful to see the changes overall over time. And this goes well with the previous topic, which is observability. Having all these links on a single page to track our own homegrown 10K architecture and also external from debug bear or site speed would be really nice.
I'm not familiar with debug bear. Is it like a site speed that tracks different things?
It's like a site speed, but in a more readable state, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I can't weigh in on that right now. I have to take a look. But thanks for linking it up. All right. Searching for the dashboard. Any other things you want to talk about? Then, if no, I think we're done. Thank you, everybody. Very interesting conversation this week. Have a great time, and I hope I see you all tomorrow on Create Team Day. Kai has forgotten. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.